All right, so just a reminder that I'm recording all these sessions on VBA. You'll find the videos right here in Learning Suite on the day. So yesterday's video says in-class example. You get the link to the video and the link to the file that we worked on. Today we're working with strings. So there are, one of the things, a lot, download this file and get this vehiclecomplaint.xlsm. Download that, open it up. The really common things to do is we've got data that's coming from some source, and we realize it's quite the format that we want it to be in, and so we've got to massage the data. And so there's a whole set of functions for dealing with that, and we're going to talk about a bunch of them today. Which you get functions. So there are functions that look at a string of characters and to say, you know what, we want to make this uppercase, or we want to make it lowercase, or we want to select the most 5 characters, or we want to know where one string exists inside of another string, or we want to cut this thing into pieces. Those are all functions that are kind of meant for doing this. So working with strings is a normal and regular thing, and that's what we're doing today. So a string is just a collection of characters. We string literal, we put it inside of quotes. And if like someone's first name is probably a string. So it's a variable type. Just like we have integer, we've got single, we've got double, we also have string. So string just says collection of characters. So let's just take a look at this data that we have here. This is complaint data. So this is actually data that I downloaded from the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau like when you were 4 or 5 years old. This is like 1999. I downloaded this data, and it's been floating around my office ever since. I decided to bring it out today for, take another debut. So here we got Greg Smith. He's from Fraser, Michigan. Here's a summary of his complaint. Unspecified engine fire for no apparent reason. My engine caught on fire, and I'm complaining. So he complained to the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau, and they take complaints. Why do they take complaints? Well, they get enough of one kind of complaint, and they're going to issue a recall, right? They're going to tell the manufacturer, you got to recall this thing and fix it because there's a lot of complaints. And so then we see some information about, specifically where it is. It's in the carburetor. And then here's the vehicle identification number. All right, so this is the data that we have. And now what I'd like to do is I would like to kind of pull in some of this other information. Now, I guess I said pull in, and that's probably not the right way to say it, because all the information that we need for this is right here in this workbook. It's all right here. We've got first and last name together as an owner. I want to show them separately as first and last name. I want to split that apart where that comma is and put 2 different things for it. But the one I want to start with is death. We might as well start with death. Let's just look on this page for the word death, D-E-A-T-H. So here on row 21, we see something that deals with death. Here's the complaint summary. Sudden acceleration caused a loss of control, accident, injuries, 1 death. Iowa State Police report, other vehicles, and there's some other information about those vehicles. So these are not all complaints where the complainant has reported a death, but that's kind of an important thing. I mean, we want to highlight that. We've got some of these problems are resulting in people dying. We got to get these things fixed. Yeah. Go to the next one. Death. What's after death? There's nothing after death. That's the end. Oh, over here. Power booster failed, causing accident, resulting in injury and death. Power booster? You want me? How far do you want me to go down? Oh, I spent $2,650 on this van. It's still a death trap. No safety defects listed in summary. So we don't know what's wrong with it, but it's a death trap, and it costs $2,000 to get fixed, apparently. Somewhere in the electrical system, the generator. Okay. So, these are real complaints that people filed. Oh yeah, in all caps. Why are they in all caps? It turns out, this is kind of a weird thing. Roll the clock back to earlier in this semester when we were talking about data management. We used a program called Access, but we talked about who was the big player in database management. It's a company you've probably heard of. That's the big database provider, Oracle. When you install Oracle out of the box, it's case sensitive when you query. So if you're querying for someone's name, whether you spell it in uppercase or lowercase or capitalize the first letter, that all matters. And so as a result, many companies and government agencies that use Oracle just say, look, just forget about it, put everything in uppercase so that we can find it easily. And I think that's exactly what's happened here. So yeah, why is this all uppercase? They're not yelling at us. It's just, that's Oracle. It's a discount, it's a death trap. Okay. So, even the VINs were yelling our VIN, our vehicle identification. Okay. So here's what I would like to do. I would like to say, hey, let's look through all of this, and anytime we find the word death in the summary, I just want to put the word yes over here in column L. This is a report of a fatality. So let's give it a shot. I'm going to go ahead and open up my Visual Basic Editor, Alt F11, and maybe Function Alt F11. Hey, I managed to, through long trial, I managed to get my immediate window to dock. So we're feeling pretty good about that. It just kept, I just had to, I can't see where it's dropping, so I just kept trying to drop it in the right place and finally got it. Okay. So let's make a sub procedure here. I'll just call it, we'll call it death trap. No, I'm going to do them all in one sub procedure. We've got a lot of stuff to do here. So why don't we just call it parse data? That's probably not the best name, but call it parse data. The term parse is, for looking at something and kind of cutting it apart for its different elements. Okay, so over here in the immediate window, let me see if I can just introduce you to the function that we're going to use. So there's a function called instr. We write it instr. And what instr does is it allows me to look for the occurrence of one string of characters inside another string of characters. And so let me just start off with let's go ahead and start off with our example. What was that line 21 that had the death trap in it? Wait, which one was the death trap? Power, sudden acceleration caused. I have spent, this van is still a death trap. Let me just take that particular part of the string. You don't really need to do this part along with me. Probably a good idea to watch. If you want to do it along, I guess you can. Okay, so here's the string that we're looking. This is the string we want to look in. But actually, the very first argument for the instr function is where do I want to start looking? I want to start at the first character. So I'm saying here, start at the first character, and then I want to look inside this string for something else. What am I looking for? Death. We're looking for death. And that better be a string literal as well. And that's all I have to do. And what it will tell me is it will tell me the character number that it found it at. So we count them over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I'm counting them up. I'm counting so fast. I'm counting as fast as I can. And that's 47, 48, 49. 50. That's it. So it's the 50th character. That's where it found it. That's the number it returns, is where did it find it? Well, what if it doesn't find it at all? Let me change this capital D to a lowercase d. What if it doesn't find it? It returns 0. So that tells us two things. If it can't find it, it returns 0, and it's case sensitive. Yeah. In Visual Basic for applications, typically when I'm comparing one string to another, it's case sensitive unless I've done something special to make it not case sensitive. As it turns out, right here in the instr function, there's an argument I can add right after this. It's optional. So I put a comma in there, and it lets me say, you know what? If I put in VB text compare instead of binary compare, which is the default, then it will be not case sensitive. So I can change the case sensitivity. All right, so here's the thing. At this point, I've got, what I'm trying to do. Probably before I do this, let's go ahead and get ourselves a loop. This will actually probably be a pretty good exercise for you. Let's get a loop that will just run through and print off all the owners' names. There's like almost 1,000 of them. There's like 988 of them here. And so we want to run right down this list. So where we're headed is we want to scan all of this data. We want to find the ones that say death in them, and we want to put over here in the right column the word yes. Step 1, let's just get a loop that can run through that data and print off the list of owners. So that's like an in-class challenge. Do that. See if you can get that going. I'm kind of expecting you at this point to be able to say, yeah, I can either do that off my top of my head, or by quickly looking at an example that we've done before, we can pull that and get it going. So, in-class example, go. Raise your hands if you have questions, and we'll pause the video. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. How many of you said, I got that to work? Oh, about a quarter or a fifth. How many of you said, I'm close, and if a little more time, I could probably get it? How many of you are going, this is all still witchcraft to me? Okay, let's take a look. So I know I'm making a loop, so I might just go ahead and start with the keyword do, beginning of my loop. Come down here and say loop. Let me get that syntax in there. Anytime I write a do loop, I'm thinking I want to have do events in here. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to need something to control. I'm going to be going down the different rows, so let me declare a variable here. Dim r as integer. Nothing magic about the name of the variable. Could be anything. I call it r. That kind of reminds me I'm using it to keep track of which row I'm on. Just before the do events, I'm going to increment my row. R equals r plus 1. Oh yeah, it's going to start off at 0, so I better give it a value to start with. First row I want is going to be row 2, so I'll say r equals 2. Now r is going to increment as I go through here. I need some way to get out of here. I'm going to loop until cells r comma 1, so looking in the first column, whichever row I get to, dot value is equal to blank. So I've got the structure of my loop put into place. I've got a variable that's going to keep track of which row I'm thinking about, which row I'm currently considering. I've got a loop set up here. I'm changing the value of r, and I'm going to loop until as r is increasing, until I bump into a blank cell. That feels pretty good. Now I just got to tell it what to do inside the loop. Debug.print cells r comma 1 dot value. Should be able to just run that and have it. Ooh, I've got my in string here. Now it turns out my immediate window only has 200 rows. And I've got almost 1,000 records here, and so I'm not going to be able to see them all, but at least I'll get the feeling that it actually worked. We can see it runs off those 1,000. Kind of slow. My computer's kind of slow. Shouldn't be slow. Anyway, there it is. We got the people there. All right. So now what I want to do, now I've got the structure in place that's looking through this. What I want to do now is look in the summary and check to see, does it say death in there? So I'm going to declare a variable called summary, dim summary as a string. I'm going to read in the summary. In fact, maybe I don't even want it. Now that I know my loop's working, I don't think I really even want this debug.print. So I'll just say summary equals, and it's row r, column 4. So all this is going to do is going to read what's in my current cell, column 4 of my current row, and it's going to put it into my variable summary. So now I just want to know, does it find it? Let me go ahead and I'm going to declare a variable called position, or just POS for short. That's short for position. It's integer. And I'm going to come here and just say, all right, so now my position is going to equal the results of my in string, instr. So remember, in string, I'm going to tell it, start looking at the first character. I'm looking in my variable called summary. That's what will be holding the full text of the summary for whichever row I'm on. I'm looking for the word death. And I want to say, don't worry about case, and so I'll make it VB text compare as my option there. That now is going to it's going to tell me where did it find death. And if it doesn't find death, what is the value of my position variable going to be? It'll be 0. So that's how I can tell. So now I'm going to say if POS is greater than 0, then it must have found it. Then I'm going to do something. If them, how about then? So this position variable will let me know, did it find it or not? I need to know if it's greater than 0. If it is, then the word death is there. I want to record the fact that I have found a complaint about somebody dying. And so that's going to be column L, which is 12, cells, row number R, column number 12, dot value, equals, and then I'll just put in yes. What do I want to put if it wasn't death? If there was no death reported? I could put no in there, or I could just leave it blank. I like leaving it blank better because then the yes really stands out. You know, I can see it there. So I'm not going to do anything if it's not found. Well, folks, I should be able to run this and see that data go in. Ooh, that's some death happening right in a row there. Looks like there's a lot of deaths. So that's what we're after. Questions? So this is instr. Instr function then tells me where one string occurs inside of another. If it doesn't occur, it's 0. The question here is this TA. 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 All right. In fact, we're going to use that same thing. Well, let me kind of put this together as a block and put a comment on this. So here I'm going to say this is marking the fatalities. All right, next thing I'd like to do then is work with the first name and the last name. This is pretty common. I've got my data here as last name, comma, first name, and I need to split that out into the difference between a first name and a last name. I mean, ultimately, what I might be doing is this could be my responsibility at the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau to respond to these people. Here's a list of now I need to write a letter to these folks. You know, I'd like to say, dear, whatever their first name is. Dear Greg, received your complaint, received your letter. Just letting you know we're serious about safety over here and whatever. So I might need to split that out because I need to be able to talk to him just as Greg, not as whatever his full name is. Okay, so talk to me about how could I possibly figure out how to split this name, this full name, into its components. Yeah, that comma is there. It's a delimiter. That's what that comma is there for. It's there to say, here's the difference between where the last name ends and the first name then starts. So let's go ahead and I'll put a comment here. We are about to split the first and last name. All right. Well, so here's something that may not be readily apparent. Down here, I'm going to be using this position variable to work on marking my fatalities. And I'm going to need something like it up here to be able to tell where that comma is. Is there any reason I can't use the same variable? Could I use that position variable here and then reuse it down here? Yeah, that would be totally fine. In fact, that's a great thing to do. It's just to keep track of where the position of something is. So I'll use that same variable. In fact, I'll probably go ahead and take this. I'll go ahead and declare a couple of variables. Dim full name as a string. Dim first name, maybe just F name. I'll call it first, F-I-R-S-T. First name as a string. And then last name. All right. So I'll kind of do this same thing here. So let me get my full name is going to be in column 1. Now my position in string starting at 1, looking at my full name, looking for what? Looking for a comma. Folks, this is starting to look a bit weird. Comma, quote, comma, quote, comma. So realize that this comma here is separating arguments in my function call, but this comma is actually the value of that argument for the function call. So you got to be very careful about this because I've got a comma between and a comma inside and so forth. Now, do I have to worry about whether it's what's an uppercase comma look like? What is it, a semicolon? No, there's uppercase just for letters. And so I don't have to say compare text here. It wouldn't hurt if I left it there, but it doesn't need to be there. I'm going to get rid of it. So now the position is going to be where we find the comma. Now, it happens that I know enough about this data to know there's always a comma. But it could be that some of these names, maybe we have a report from Cher. There's no last name. And so what would that be? So we might have to actually check to make sure, hey, is there a comma? And if so, then do something. Otherwise, do something else. But just for simplicity here, and I happen to know there's a comma in every single one of these. So we're just going to assume the comma is there. So how are we going to go about splitting off the last name? Let's take a look. Gets us to another function that we haven't looked at called left. So left allows us to have, some string to Nephi, seer of olden time. I have no idea why that is like the string that rolls off my mind when I'm looking for a string. You'd think it'd be something I could type better. Okay, so left says, give me a string to work with, and then tell me how many characters I should return off the left of it. So if I want the leftmost 7 characters, or the leftmost 8 characters, then it'll say, all right, here's the leftmost 8 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's what left does. I feed it something, it looks at what I have there, and it returns, whatever I've told it to return. See how it does? So now we're going to use that function with the fact that we know where the comma is to set what our last name variable is going to be. Last name is equal to the left of full name. And how many characters do we want? Position. That's not quite right, but it's close. So let's go ahead and do that, and then let's take a look. I'm going to put a breakpoint right here on the next block of code. Remember, just click over here in the left margin. That sets a breakpoint. What does a breakpoint do? It says when I start running the code, go line by line, and when we hit that breakpoint, just stop. Take us into break mode so I can see what's in memory. So with a breakpoint there, this line will have executed. I should be able to run that, and then come down here and just print off. Oh, I snuck this in on you. Question mark's the same as print. It's a shortcut for print. You can just say print, what am I looking for? Last name. Looks pretty good. I got Smith here, but what's the problem? I got the comma too. Well, let's just take a look. Let me see what position actually is. So I'm going to print off position. So it says position is 6. So if I think about this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Smith has 5 letters, but 6 is actually where the comma is. So yeah, the position is right. It's telling me 6. But I don't want the comma. What do I do? Yeah, just subtract 1. So up here where I'm saying I want the left, I'm setting up what the last name is. I don't want the left position. I want the left position minus 1. So I'll stop and run that again. Come down here and print last name. And now I've got Smith without the comma. So far, so good. How are we feeling about the left? We got another one called right. We can use that to get the first name. Let's take a look. So let me go ahead and establish my, I still got my position there. Well, let's look at it here. Let's go ahead and put Greg Smith. Let's work with the actual text here. So I'm going to put that right here just so we can kind of see it. And I'm going to go ahead and put position minus 1 here. Now, folks, I'm doing something a little bit tricky here. I'm using a variable from my code down here in my immediate window. This only works if I'm in break mode, if I've got a yellow line here. If I don't have the yellow line, I'm not currently running the program, Visual Basic Editor has no idea what position is. But here it'll be okay. That should just give me Smith. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the rightmost characters of it. Ugh. So I'll change left to right. The trouble is, position tells me how far the comma is from the left. So how could I possibly figure out how many characters I need from the right? Any thoughts? What's that? Oh, I've got the length of last name. Well, so the comment is, well, hey, if we know the length of the last name, then that will tell me, kind of where we need to start. But I've already got that. Position already tells me where the comma is, so I can just add a couple onto that to get to where the G starts. But the trouble is, I don't know how many characters to take. I got to take the rightmost and tell it how many characters. Any thoughts?
Count the characters in the whole string, subtract off like the left half.
I could count all the characters, get the whole length of that, and then subtract off where that position is. That's what we're going to have to do. So what I want is now to put in here, instead of just the position -1, I want the length. We saw the length earlier. The length of Greg Smith minus the position. And I can never remember if it's -2 or +2. I always got to think of it. Let's try +2. What does that give us? Nope, it's -2. Minus another 2. Why is it -2? Oh, minus position. Position the comma -1. There we go. So I've got to, remember, I'm a little bit offset from, because I've got the comma and I've got the space, so it takes a little bit of adjustment here. So this expression would allow me to get that, but there's a little bit cleaner way to do it. But I did want to introduce the right. So if what I need is a certain number of characters from the right function will do that. It's exactly analogous to left. Is that question or help from the TA? That's the scratch. That's an armpit scratch. Okay. So let's look at the other option. So folks, there's another way at this called mid. So left, right, and mid are like 3 peas in a pod. They let me look at a string and say, oh, I want something on the left, something off the right, or something out of the middle. So let's take a look at mid. Go ahead and put Greg Smith in here. Middle then takes 2 arguments. Where do I want to start? I want to start with the 3rd character. How many characters do I want to take? I want to take 3. Let's take 4. Let's take 5. So let's take 2. So what this returns, this says, all right, look at Greg Smith, start at the 3rd character. Here's the 1st character, 2nd character, 3rd character. So here's the 3rd character. It's the I. So it says start at the middle. Where do you want to start? Start at the 3rd character. How many characters do you want to bring? I want to bring 2. And so this expression brings out it. It's the IT right here in Smith. Got it? Now here's the neat trick. If I don't tell it where to stop, I don't say just take 2, it says, great, I'll bring back everything. I'll start there and go to the very end. The neat thing about that is that that's exactly what I want to do. I know where the comma is, so I can say position +2, and that should say, all right, don't start the comma, start one over, but don't start the space, start another one over, and that's where the G is going to start. And so it's quite a bit simpler to say I want to take the middle portion of this string from wherever I found the comma +2, and that's how I can get the first name. First name equals mid of the full name, starting at my position +2. And because I don't tell it when to stop, it assumes I mean the whole rest of the string. That should give me a first name. Now that I've got a first name and a last name, I'm ready to write them out to my worksheet. Where do they go? They go in 7 and 8, G and H. Let's call them 7 and 8. So I'll go ahead and write them out. Column 7 is going to equal first name. Column 8 is going to equal last name. Stop this, take off the breakpoint, run the whole thing, and that should lay in all those names, split apart based on where the comma was. Say the question again. Here? So this is, oh yeah, you're right. I need to change that to position +2. Thank you. So I think I am getting that. So the question is, hey, I think you're bringing in the space here. And if we look right there, yeah, there's a space. You're absolutely right. I meant to put first name is position +2. Okay. escape out of that cell. And this first name should be +2. We'll run that again, and you should see these things just shift over just a little bit because it's getting rid of that space. Thank you. That was an important catch. Yeah, having a space on the beginning of your of anything in Excel, no good's going to come out of that. Go ahead. TA right here in the front. Anyone? TA? No? A couple of TAs? Where'd my TAs go? There's popcorn out. Did they go? Oh, I thought they're getting popcorn. Bring some to me. Okay. So kind of keep your hand up, and we'll get the TAs over. Hey, is Zach here? Zach? All right, let me go ahead and pause here, and let's see what I can do. All right, so let's take a look. To be able to then get this stuff from all uppercase letters to propercase, capital G, little reg, capital S, little myth, then what we're going to need to do is work with the ucase and the lcase function. So here's the lcase function. I execute lcase on a string that's got some capital letters in it. It gives me the lowercase version. What happens if it's already lowercase? Is it going to like make it even smaller? No, I mean if it's lowercase, it just says it's already lowercase, it stays lowercase. Same thing with ucase, it just gives you the uppercase version of whatever you have in there. What if there's a number in the middle of it? You know, what if this is 2 Nephi? Is that going to change it to @Nephi because that's what's the shift to that? No. Uppercase only applies to letters A through Z. Okay, everything else is not affected by ucase or lcase. All right, so here's what I want to do. I'm going to go ahead and read in the last and first name into these variables. Now let me just change what it is. Now I'm going to say that I'm going to change what my last name is. Last name is going to equal to, now, I happen to know these are already all uppercase. So I'm not going to worry about changing the case of the first character. I want the leftmost character of my last name, my leftmost one character of last name, concatenated with the mid of last name, starting at 2. So if I started at 2, it would take the ephi here. Left 1 is the n, mid 2 is ephi. Now I haven't changed anything of the case here, so I'll just come and wrap an lcase around that second part of the name. So I'm taking the leftmost one character, and I'm going to concatenate that on with the lowercase version of the middle of this, starting at the second character, and taking how many characters? The rest of them. That should change last name to that. So I'll do the same thing with first name. And that should make it now, when I run this, it will put in those in the proper case. And again, this is string manipulation. This is what this stuff is for. So I've got the string, I want to cut it up in different pieces, change the way it looks. Any questions? Yeah. So the question is, hey, there's a function built into a function built into Excel. VBA doesn't have a function like this, but Excel has a function called, is it called proper case? I think it's just called proper.
There's one that you do like strconv, and then you do
Oh, yeah. Let's not go there. We're doing the baby steps today. Yeah. So that might be, in this case, we've only got one word to deal with. But that would be better if we had multiple words. All right. So really, I'm introducing you to here. I'm introducing you to the ucase and the lcase functions. There's a string convert function that lets you do some more kind of slick things. Don't worry about that for today. All right. All right. Next step. Let's see if we can't get to the manufacturer of this car. Good heavens, how are we going to do it? We got the owner. We have the city and the state where the person's from, the summary, the component, and the VIN. How are we going to get the manufacturer? Well, fortunately, we've got another page over here called Lookup. What the lookup allows me to do is this has information about the VIN. It turns out those VINs are not just kind of, counting identifiers, but they can tell me information. If I don't understand how to read a VIN, I can tell different kinds of information about it. For instance, if I just look at the very first character, I can figure out something about the country of origin. I can tell where that car was made. Regardless of where the headquarters of the manufacturer is, I can tell you where the car was manufactured. If the very first letter on that is a 2 of the VIN, the thing was made in Canada. If the first letter is a 3, it was made in Mexico. Now, it's not perfect. If it's an L, it was made either in Taiwan or China. If it's a Y, it was made either in Belgium or Sweden. But I can get some information out of that very first one. So, it turns out the first 3 characters will tell me enough to know who the manufacturer was. And so let's go ahead and go to the end of this list. There's some more interesting ones down here. So if the first 3 letters are ZFF of the VIN, that's a Ferrari. If it's ZHW, it's a Lamborghini. If it's ZAM, it's a Maserati. And so if I've got this table, I should be able to look at the VIN and then figure out who the manufacturer is. Are you ready to do it? Let's do it. Now, I might just choose to do that with a formula right here. In fact, let's just go ahead and let's start with that. What function would I use inside of Excel to do this? Do you remember this? Yeah, a lookup. We'll use a VLOOKUP. So this equals VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP. Okay, I got to have the value that I'm looking up. Whoa. The value I need is the leftmost 3 characters off of the VIN. Good news, the left function we use in VBA, it also works directly in Excel. So I can ask for the left of this cell, comma, 3 characters. That'll give me the leftmost 3 characters. It now wants to know the table I'm looking this up in. Well, I'll come over here to my lookup sheet, and fortunately for us, I've named that range. So I'll come right here, and why is that in the function? It must be in the function because I'm inside of the making a function. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and highlight this. Let's see, Shift Control, right down. Yeah, it knows that's a named range. It puts in manufacturer there. The next argument that I need is which column I want to bring back. Column number 2. And then I got to say is it exact match, and that's going to be false. That'll give me is it a range lookup? I'll put false. That will give me an exact match. And that should give me the manufacturer name. So for this particular vehicle, this is an AMC Jeep. That's the maker of the vehicle. Now, and I could just copy that formula down and let the VLOOKUP, be exactly like just a normal lookup function in Excel. Now, how many of you have ever worked on a worksheet that is huge and has lots of complex formulas on it? What's the feeling of these worksheets when you're using them? What is it like? Why is it overwhelming? A whole lot of information, and typically there's 2 other things that happen with these. One is they start to be slow. So when you start to make changes to it, it's got to recalculate everything. It takes forever. And these really large checks to deal with. And so what we're saying is, listen, we're parsing all this data out. Instead of putting a formula here that Excel is going to have to deal with for the rest of its life, let's just have our program do the lookup and drop the value in there. And it's just data. And if we're saying we're not going to come here and VIN on this car, wasn't really this VIN, we're going to change it. Not going to happen. We don't have to worry about that formula updating dynamically. And so let's go ahead and do that. Now, fortunately, this is like a great tool here in VBA. All those functions you have access to in Excel, you have access to them in VBA as well. Watch this. All I have to say is worksheet function. Worksheet function. This is the name of an object in VBA. So when I hit the dot, it goes, oh, we got a lot of methods here. And one of them is called VLOOKUP. So all those functions I've got access to in Excel, I can access them right here in VBA as well. Now the syntax that I actually have to provide the arguments for is a little different. For instance, over here where I just made the formula, initially over here in Excel, I could just put the word manufacturer here. Well, over here in VBA, it's going to look at that and go, that must be some kind of variable name. So I'll have to give it some different way to identify the range I'm talking about the table, but the structure is going to be the same. All right, so I can go ahead and drop my little, let's see. Let's go ahead and build this up in the code rather than try to do it right here in the immediate window. All right, so to be able to do this lookup, I'm going to need to know those left 3 characters. I'm going to hold those into a separate variable. So I'm going to get myself ready with a comment here. I will say look up the manufacturer. I need a variable for this. And that variable actually has a name. Those first 3 characters in the industry, they go by a particular name. It is called the WMI, the World Manufacturer Identifier. So that's what I'm going to name my variable. Dim WMI as a string. All right, so now when I'm looking up that, I'm going to set the WMI equal to the leftmost 3 characters of something. I'm not even sure which column I'm in. Which column am I in over here? My VIN is in column F. A, B, C, D, E, F. That's the 6th column. So I want the leftmost 3 characters off of cells, row number R, column number 6, and the value of that cell. I'm just going to go ahead and run up to this point and check to make sure that my WMI looks pretty good. Come down here to my immediate window, WMI. I got 1JC. Does that look right? Yeah, 1JC. There it is. That's the leftmost 3 characters. I like it. So now I've got the leftmost 3 characters sitting here in a variable. I'm ready to do the lookup. Is there a question here, or is it TA? The question is, how does it know to look up the lookup sheet? And the answer is, at this point, it doesn't. What I'm asking for is I'm asking for the left 3 characters off of the active sheet. So I'm assuming that this sheet's the active sheet. When we get to that lookup function, we're going to have to tell it how to go find the lookup on that other sheet. Incidentally, it's probably not a bad idea to teach you how to refer to a different sheet when you got one sheet active and I want to pull data off of a different sheet. It's really pretty easy. We just haven't gotten to it yet. Let me just show you how to do it real quick. Little sidebar. So let's say that I want to pull off my Greg Smith right here off of A2. Okay, no problem. Cells A2. Let's do range. Range A2 dot value. There's Greg Smith. Now, remember, I've got 2 worksheets here that and they each have an A2 on it. So how does it know which one I'm talking about? I haven't told it which one I mean, and so it assumes I mean the active one. So let me activate my lookup sheet. A2's got a different value here. Now it's going to bring in the value. That might be a little confusing, but it's bringing in the value from that cell right here. I can tell it I'm talking about the complaint sheet just by doing this. Complaints. I'm sorry. Whoa, that went weird. Let's try that again. Sheets, and then inside of quotes and parentheses, the name of the sheet. Complaints. And so now, instead of just starting with the range, I'm telling it, no, I want to start with a particular sheet. Start with this sheet, and then dot a particular range. Now it doesn't have to guess at which range I mean. There's 2 of them that are A2. Now I've specifically told it, no, this sheet. Yep. Oh, yeah. What if I have 2 workbooks open? Could I say workbooks and then put the name of the workbook, dot sheets, the name of the sheet? Yeah, I could do that. Folks, it seems crazy, but I could have 2 different copies of Excel open, and I could say this copy of Excel, this workbook is open in that copy of Excel, this, where was that? Worksheet, this particular range. Yeah, you can chain these things up together. We're not going to ever do anything in this class that's beyond a single workbook. You have to work from one workbook to another. But being able to get from one sheet to another might be really helpful. Okay, but in this case, we're on the same sheet. So our WMI is just going to pull information off of our active sheet. Incidentally, it would not hurt us to put this in there. Right? I could drop this in right there, and that's just fine. Even though that is the active sheet, it doesn't hurt me. It does make the code a little bit more complex, but it doesn't hurt to be there. Yep.
Is it faster to do that as opposed to like doing sheets and then it depends what sheet is not select?
Okay, is it faster just to refer to the sheet than it is to say sheets.select and then get the value off the active cell? The answer is yes, it is dramatically faster. I mean, think about it, folks. If I look at what has to happen here when I change a sheet, I've got to redraw the whole screen. The computer's got to redraw the whole screen. Which computer, if you say you're going to buy the most expensive personal computer you could buy, what is that computer designed to do? Do you know what it is? It's not business. Game, someone said it. Yeah, gaming computers are the most expensive computers we buy as a general class of computer, and that's because they are built to be able to update the screen extremely fast. It's processor intensive to change all those pixels and to change them so fast that I can't even notice that they're changing. I mean, you got to see the change, but. And so if I'm constantly changing that sheet back and forth, I'm turning Excel into a video game. It's not a very fun video game, but something that has to refresh the screen a lot, and that's really going to slow things down. So yeah, if I actually activate the sheet, that really slows things down. And if I'm processing through this, or I've got 1,000 records, and I've got to go and activate the sheet, do the next record, activate the sheet, is that going to be a noticeable difference? It will be hugely noticeable. It might change the length of this procedure from running from about 2 seconds to like 20 seconds. Could be a factor of 10. Could be a big deal. So if we can avoid changing the sheet, we definitely want to make that, we want to avoid that. All right, I forgot where I am. Let's take a look. Okay, I've got the WMI. So now I'm ready to get the lookup. So let me go ahead and create a variable for that. I'm going to call this MFR, the manufacturer, as a string. And I'm going to set MFR equal to, now is where I use that worksheet function VLOOKUP. Worksheet function dot work, W-R-K, sheet function dot VLOOKUP. All right, so the first argument is what's the value that I'm going to be looking up? So what do I put here? WMI is holding the first 3 characters. That's the lookup value, and so that's going to be my variable here, WMI. Next argument is what's the table that has the information that I want? So here I could say sheets lookup, and then some range that tells it which range, but I have actually named that range. So if I come over here to the lookup sheet and drop this list down, there's a range called manufacturer, and if I select that, it shows me that's the range right there. And so I can just use that to refer to, I can use that name to refer to it. Here's how it works. I just say range, and then in parentheses, I put the name of it. If it's a named range, I can use the name to identify it. And so you can see that I can get to that range. It's D3 to E471. And it does not matter which the active sheet is. Named ranges they're globally unique names. So I can just say range manufacturer, that's the table that has the data that I want. That's the next argument. Then I'm going to tell it which column has the data. That's column 2. And then is it a range lookup? False. I want it to be an exact match lookup. That should give me the manufacturer written into that variable. Just take a look. WMI is blank. Why is WMI? Oh, I got the wrong sheet. Might be a good idea for me to start off by activating the right sheet. So let's say sheets, complaints, dot select. We'll start off by making sure we got the right sheet selected. And now my manufacturer inside that variable is MFR is AMC Jeep. Next step is just to write it out to the right place in the workbook. And that's supposed to be going out to column I. That's column number 9. So cells, row number R, column number 9, dot value equals MFR. So now if I run the whole thing, it should lay in those manufacturers. Get rid of my breakpoint, run the whole thing, and we've put in all the manufacturers now from that lookup table. Whew. That's what it takes to put in the manufacturer. Is this a lot? That's a lot. Is it powerful? Yeah, that's pretty powerful stuff. So we've introduced the fact that we can use any of our functions that we have access to Excel from VBA. That's almost entirely true. The place where it's not true is that if VBA has built into it a function already for doing what that function in Excel does, you got to use the built-in one. There's a left function in Excel. It's exactly the same as the left function in VBA. And because there's that overlap, I do not have the luxury of using that function. Oh no, go back. So if I say I want to find the left function, I'll see there is no left function. So in the list of functions that comes up, it's not here because it's built into VBA, you've got to use the native one. So if you go looking after a function here and it's not in the list, what does that mean? It's part of the VBA language. I got to find that one and track it down. Okay, questions, folks? How are we doing? Anything? All right, actually pulling off the year and country are exactly the same as pulling off the make. If we look over at the lookup table, the country is just the very first character. Column number 10 is the model year. I would do that same approach. Do a lookup, find whatever character number 10 is, and look up the year here. So I'm going to skip those for now, and let's go to our last column, which is the primary failure. What do I mean by primary failure? Well, let's just take a look at these. If I can find one that's got, oh, here's a good one. Row number 3, so our second data point. Let's just look at we've got a question up here. Here's the complaint. Central power door locking system is inconveniently located in the back portion of the driver's door. That's we're writing to the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau to say we don't like where the locking mechanism is. Okay, that's all right. So that's the problem, and here's where it is. Now, this is like a whole hierarchy. It's part of the equipment, it's part of the electric power accessories, it's part of the locks, and it's the door lock. So we have this kind of whole hierarchy thing that's established here. And so what I want to do is I want to pull off the very last value from this chain. I don't want to know everything that gets down. I just want to know the very last value here. And this is a little bit complicated to get to this. It's especially a little bit more, I could find the very last colon and then use mid to figure out what that is. In fact, that wouldn't be too bad. But if I want to get all of these, kind of split these out into their different sets and work with each one of them individually, that's a little more involved to do. And fortunately, VBA gives us some tools for working with that. Let's just take a look at this one. Take this very one here, and I'll take it over to my immediate window to play with it. Tab, escape. Okay, so here in my immediate window now, let me just take this string. I've got that string here. Now, what I would like to do is I would like to split this into different pieces. What's the delimiter? The delimiter here is a colon. Well, there's a function called split. I'll put an opening parenthesis there, and then in quotes, I'm going to give it this whole long string. The second argument, so the first argument is a string that I want to cut up into smaller pieces. The next argument is, what's the delimiter? I'll put that as a colon. Whoops, I'll put that as a colon. And then I'll close the parentheses. This split function does something miraculous, mysterious, and beyond what I'm going to teach you. It takes this whole string and it makes several strings together, but it puts them together in what's called an array. I take 2 days to teach my class. When I teach the full semester on this, I spend 2 full days helping my students to understand what an array is. I'm not going to try to get you to understand what an array is, but I'm going to teach you how to use it enough to use the split function. So the split, right up here to that closed parentheses, that's going to give me this complex structure called an array. Now all I'm going to do is tell it which one of those elements I want. Number 2. It looks a little bit weird. We haven't seen a syntax like this before, where we say, all right, we've got this, here's the end of that split function, and then right after it, in parentheses, we put a number 2. And that's going to tell us that's the locks. The number 2 position is the locks. Let's see. Here's equipment, electronic power accessories, locks. Wait a minute. Equipment, power accessories. Why is it number 3? Why is it number 2? It looks like number 3. Why is it number 2? Because someone said we should start counting at 0. That person had a rough childhood. They probably went to kindergarten and didn't quite get the counting thing right and decided, now that I'm making decisions, we start counting at 0. And so the first position is 0. So that's equipment. The number 1 position is going to be that electric power accessories. And then the number 3 position will be the last one. There is a last position. It's number 3 in this case. Now, I think what you're really asking, is there a way to ask it what the last one is? And that's exactly what we have to do here, because that's what we're after, right? We're after this word door on here. It turns out we can do that. This range that it goes through, 0 to 3, are referred to as the boundaries of this array, of this collection of strings. And so to do that, to ask it how high the boundary goes, what's the upper boundary for this structure, for this array, there's a function that will return the upper boundary. It's called ubound. And what I'm going to give it is that actually does the splitting. Now, I don't want to include the quote. I don't want to include the 3 here, because that gets it away from being that complex structure back to just one of the strings. So I want to take everything that I'm splitting there, and I want to ask what the upper boundary of that is. And that will tell me what the upper boundary is. Incidentally, I can ask what the lower boundary is. That's pretty boring, because the lower boundary is always 0. But I can ask, and it will tell me the lower boundary is 0. There are times when I'm doing complex things with this array that I can make a different lower boundary, but for split, it's always going to be 0. So I'm going to ask for the upper boundary, and that tells me 3. So using a combination, the split function, the ubound function, and then telling it which index I want in parentheses right here, I can figure out what's the last part of that. So let's go ahead and do it. Let me go ahead and create a variable. What do they call this column? This is called component. I'll create a variable called component. And let's go ahead and find, what are we looking for? It's called the primary failure. So let me go ahead and make another comment here. Find primary failure. Is there a question? Oh, yeah, I got to give it a type, thanks. As a string. So here I'm going to find the primary failure. And we're just going to go ahead and read the component off of the worksheet into a string for me to work with a little bit more easily. And so that's going to be column number, I'm not sure what column it's in. Column number E, that's 5. So all I'm doing is I'm saying, from whichever row I'm currently looking at, let's bring in the value from column 5, put it in a variable called component. All right, so now I'm going to ask what's the last index? What's the upper bound? I'll need a variable for that too. Dim, I'll call it last index. That number that I use to say which part of that structure I wanted to refer to as an index, that will be an integer. So let's establish the last index. Last index is equal to the upper boundary, u bound, of split. What am I splitting? I'm splitting component. And I'm splitting it on the colon. Let me go ahead and run that, and we'll see that in this case, my last index is 1. Why is it 1 instead of 3? Because I'm on row number 1, and row number 1 only has 2 parts in here. So this is index 0, this is index 1. The upper boundary for this one really is 1. And so that's why my last index is 1. Now all I have to do is write out the last index position of that split string. So I'm going to write it out to column number M. That's like 13. So cells, oops. The current row, column number 13, its value is going to be equal to split component based on the colon. And I want to tell it the number 1 index, but it's number 1 just for this row. The next row it's going to be the number 3 index. That's the very reason that I'm holding this last index variable here. So that should then write out if I execute that line, it should write out fuel carburetor. That's the last block here. And if I run it again, it brings in door and just brings in each of those last elements. So I should be able to take off my breakpoint, run the code, and it will just run and parse that data out. So this split thing, I get it. This split thing is pretty complex. It's mostly complex because I'm not really teaching you the underlying structure that it actually returns. We just don't have the time to do it. But that split function is so powerful that if I can just get you to say, okay, these two things ask for the upper boundary of what gets split, and then I can use an index number to tell which of the elements I'm splitting apart, that gives you a lot of power. Even if you don't fully grasp what's going on, it gives you a lot of power to start to work with that. Questions? TA? Stretching? Folks, this is what I wanted to cover today. Let's take a look at the schedule and see what we've got coming up.